Hello, you're watching the At the Races Cheltenham Megasite preview of the 2011 Cheltenham Festival, and we are going to look at the Tote Sport Cheltenham Gold Cup, a race that I'm sure everyone, I marked down the few times I backed the winner. To have ridden the winner of the Gold Cup must be the high point of your career.
Oh, definitely. For me, when I was growing up as a kid, it was the one race I wanted to win. Of course, when John Joe won it on Dawn Run, it was a race for me. I know they say the Melbourne Cup is a race that stops the nation, but when Dawn Run won that Gold Cup in 1986, it stopped the nation, and that was Ireland. It just, the whole country
It was
celebrated.
one of the most emotional finishes. It was fantastic. All the hats going up. It was absolutely fantastic.
It was a fantastic spectacle, and I feel privileged to have my name on the Roll of Honour.
Fantastic, and a day you will never forget. Well, there are several runners today that have got their name on that Roll of Honour. The old brigade, we've got, of course, Denman and Kauto Star. They're back again, but are they getting a bit long in the tooth? Imperial Commander won it last year and won it pretty well. He's had a very light campaign this year. He's the 4-to-1 favourite. Long run, very much for new kid on the block. Of course, the King George winner, but how is he going to act round Cheltenham? He's 6-to-1. Denman is 7-to-1, just favoured in the betting to his stable companion Kauto Star. There's Diamond Harry, who we haven't seen since the Hennessy, 11-to-1. Nick Williams playing a canny game there. There's Kempis, 16-to-1, who won the Irish Hennessy. 20-to-1, Midnight Chase, who takes a massive step up in class, but he loves Cheltenham and he's improving. Pandorama, 20-to-1. The only blip on his radar is when he didn't perform in the Hennessy, and 33-to-1 bar, the old Tidal Bay. People will have a few supporters. It's a fantastic race, isn't it?
It is, and I think it's well summed up by 4-to-1 the field as well. When you got a 4-to-1 favourite in Imperial Commander, a horse who won the race last year. So, and if this year's come out and won, he won up at Haydock, beat Tidal Bay. He was eased down on that occasion, so a lot of people getting carried away about the proximity of Tidal Bay to him. But he's a smart horse. He loves Cheltenham.
Imperial Commander, we're going to talk about. Last year's winner of the race. He's had a very, very light campaign. The only time we've seen him was at Haydock back in November. He's had a few racecourse gallops. Didn't particularly impress anyone at Warwick.
I was at Kempton.
And then he's had another one at Kempton. And what did you think?
Well, I thought it was no more than an exercise.
Adequate.
Just an exercise canter,
right.
really.
So it didn't tell you an awful lot?
No, it told you nothing. All it told you was that he was alive and he was well and he moved nicely and he did it well, and Paddy Brennan was smiling from ear to ear when he came back in. So I think you'd have to say, even Paddy, I did one of these Cheltenham previews with him the other night, and he said that he wants to wait and see what happens at Kempton before he makes his mind up about the horse, and he said he was extremely happy. He said it was a different horse to the horse that worked at Warwick.
I did a Cheltenham preview with Paddy last year and at Toaster, and he was very upbeat actually, because he's a bit on the edge, isn't he, Paddy? But this horse, Imperial Commander, he's won 6 times at Cheltenham. He hammered Denman last year by 7 lengths. He is the champion. I know he didn't perform at Aintree next time, but he loves Cheltenham. 6 of his 12 visits there have resulted in a win.
Yeah, he comes to life when he gets there, and Nigel Twiston Davis got a very good record at the festival as well, which is a massive plus. And I think the vibes coming from the camp are a lot better than what they were after his bit of work at Warwick.
What about the old brigade? Because Denman, the tank, of course, the winner in 2008, he was second last year. He ran a very good race with an enormous weight in the Hennessy Gold Cup at Newbury back in November. Haven't seen him since. Here he is back in 2007, winning the Lexus Chase at Leopardstown. We know what sort of horse he is. He's a fantastic horse. He loves Cheltenham. He won the Royal Sun Alliance in 2007. But his time is catching up with him. But is there possibly just one more Gold Cup for him?
I don't think so. I'd love to see it happen, and I'll be there to see it if it does happen. But he's had didn't I say he's had a little bit of a tinkering done with his wins since before, which that might just enhance him a little bit. Because if there was a problem with his breathing, it can only help. But he was comprehensively beaten in the Hennessy. And
the last time he won is when he won the Hennessy the year before, so it's a little bit of a while since he's got his head in front.
It is, but again, he's going to help set the race up, and it's going to be a fantastic contest.
I'm sure there'll be match bets between Denman and Kauto Star, won't there, between the two? Because Kauto Star, very similar profile. He came down in the race last year, but of course, previous winner of the Gold Cup. Here he is. This is for Down Royal. His warm up back in November when he beat China Rock was back in third place there. That's Sizing Europe, isn't it? On the
yes, it
right,
is.
just fading out of contention. What about old Kauto, winner 2007, 2009, and fell 4 out last year?
I think you dismiss him at your peril.
Really?
Yeah, I really do. Again, I can't emphasise enough, how important it is that, when your selections go through some of the leading contenders, watch a few of their runs leading up to them, and, then make your decisions based on what you see. And, when you watched the race last year of him in the Gold Cup, he was travelling so well early on in the race, almost too well in Ruby's hands. He clouted one fence, and then from that, he basically stopped travelling. And he just looked like Ruby was struggling to get him going. I don't know, maybe if he just hurt himself a little bit or what when he made that mistake early. But for me, he just stopped travelling and stopped going. Then, of course, the writing was on the wall when he did fall at the top of the hill.
I, like many others, was caught up in the hype at Kempton for the King George. Everyone had their, come on, Kauto scarves and banners and everything like that. And you could just feel the disappointment. I mean, it was fantastic for a long run. He was a real hero. But yeah, okay.
The thing that I don't get about all this is, how does a horse go from being a 4 to 6 chance in a King George at Kempton to a 12 to 1 shot in the Gold Cup 24 hours later?
It doesn't. Probably running a bit of a pig of a race in the King George.
So what? Just because he's run one bad race, does that suddenly make him?
That's how fickle we are.
I know. Does that suddenly make him a bad racehorse? And that, for me, means that the horse represented value. And I backed him after that for the Gold Cup at an each-way price, because I thought, well, he's actually a bit of value now, and you can take a punt on him. But the thing is, he doesn't go from being a bad racehorse overnight. So, I think that it was a very, well, in my opinion, it was an overreaction, but it's only mine.
But I mean, that's a good thing if you're reading between the lines and you're staying with him, because you get a bit
of value.
Okay, well, no, I know, but you're within the Henderson camp, sort of. I mean, you rode millions of winners. Long Run is he is the new star, isn't he? He won the King George, and it was a fantastic win. No getting away from that. It was a fantastic win. There's talk about him not running so well at Cheltenham when he's run there. Hasn't really shown that sort of form. But so, what about the Cheltenham factor, first of all?
Well, I think you've got to forgive this horse a little bit. He was found to be wrong when he disappointed in the Paddy Power. I had one of the biggest bets I've ever had
in the Paddy Power. But afterwards, the sort of form expert was saying that his actual form
he went up. The handicapper reacted by raising his rating. He was rated 156. He finished admirably in third. He was found to be wrong after the race. And then he comes out and wins the King George comprehensively, putting up a great performance, given a very good ride by Sam Whaley-Cohen. What you've got to remember is last year when he ran in the RSA, he was a relatively young horse, only a 5-year-old, and he'd been on the go all season. He'd been running in France the previous summer, so he'd had a long year. And I think this horse was just jaded when he ran at the Cheltenham Festival last year. Then if you add that to the fact that he was found to be wrong, having been placed in the Paddy Power, you've got a horse who actually has got a poor record at Cheltenham, and he's got valid excuses.
But so would you still see him as a major first
He's a major contender.
He is.
He really is. At 6 to 1, I think he's a player.
Okay, now this is an interesting one, because Nick Williams, who we know is a mighty trainer, and he's played a very canny game with Diamond Harry. Diamond Harry, of course, beat Denman in the Hennessy at Newbury back in November. He's been put away. I think Nick Williams said afterwards, well, he's at the Gold Cup. Was there an intended plan to run him after the Hennessy? I don't think so. I think he said...
He's a horse who he doesn't get many runs into him, does he? Because if you remember back to his bumper days, he won a bumper at Newbury, which is a very valuable sales bumper. They put him away and ran him in the same race the following year. So it's not something that's never happened before.
He's only run in 4 steeplechases.
Correct. He's a horse who he doesn't take his races well. If you have a look at him in the paddock as well, he's a very light-framed horse. And I think that's why Nick deserves an awful lot of credit for the way he campaigns this horse. Even though a lot of people like to see these horses run more, he's a horse who he can only be campaigned lightly.
Is he good enough?
He's got a lot of ability, and I think he's definitely a fringe player.
He's a fringe player, okay.
Yeah.
Kempes, I would personally say I'd be surprised. I'm not the expert here. We see him winning the Hennessy Gold Cup at Leopardstown, and as we say, the old cliche gets trotted out. This was his Gold Cup, and I think it well might have been.
I think it was, but we see China Rock in the middle. You know, he's a horse who probably went off a fraction too fast in this race and helped set the race up for Kempes. But a strict line through China Rock does give this horse a bit of a chance with the likes of Kauto Star.
Okay, that is Kempes. Pandorama's an interesting one because he probably needs soft ground, doesn't he? That's one thing.
Yeah, I think that's given, and Allmead has almost said that as well. Unless he gets soft ground, this horse won't run. But I backed him in the Hennessy. I think he's a very good horse, and I think he's a major player.
That was the only blip on his radar. Jumping, wasn't it?
It was, and a lot of people crabbed him and said, oh, well, maybe he's not as good when he runs in this country, but he actually nearly got brought down, you know. So he just got completely knocked out of the race, and I'd forgive him that.
He looked good in the Lexus at Leopardstown.
He looked very good.
And we can see it here. We can see how good he looked. John Cole was third. Money Tricks, the grey horse, was second, one of the greys there. And Pandorama. But I think the big question here is just keep an eye on the skies.
Yeah, I think it would have to be almost like a Master Oates year when it was bottomless for this fella to figure.
But there he is winning, a major player if the ground is soft. Now Midnight Chase, I mean, as far as sort of handicap, he's gone from 137 I think to 163. He's won his last 4 races, 3 at Cheltenham. Before the Cheltenham winning run started, here he is winning at Hexham here, beating a horse called Political Pendant, who was at the time rated 80 over fences, so we didn't really know what we were in for.
I think it might, it's just the same old thing, isn't it? With the benefit of hindsight, you might look back and think he was a bit of a certainty here. But you know, this horse, Dougie Costello, who rides him, he says that this horse has got a chance of being placed. He's got a real attacking style of racing, and
you often get an up and comer, don't you? A horse that sort of made his way through the handicapping ranks, running a big race in the Gold Cup.
Trained by a very good young trainer, Neil Mulholland, but I think this fella, he might just be biting off more than he can chew here.
But is this a vintage year, do you think? Because you've got, you know, Denman and Kauto Star, maybe their best years are behind them. You've got Long Run, the up and comer. You've got the champion Imperial Commander. How open a Gold Cup do you see it being?
I think it's open. There's no doubting they've had problems with Imperial Commander. And I think that's been emphasised in the press. Long Run, a lot of people are still not sure about his Cheltenham form. Denman, people are worried about, is he on the way down? Kauto Star, a lot of people saying the same about him. We haven't seen too much of Diamond Harry this year. Suddenly you get down to Kempes at 16-1. So yes, it is open, and you can't rule any of these fringe horses out. So maybe there is a bit of value to be had.
That wily old, I think probably maybe it's a bit rude to call him a wily old rogue. I love him. Tidal Bay, 33-1. You never know with him.
I tell you what, you could do a lot worse than to back him each way. And I think I might just do that, because looking at the way he finished in that race up at Haydock, as well, if the ground comes up soft, this horse could he could nick a place.
And he ran a blinder at Cheltenham last time too, didn't he?
He's got a good record at Cheltenham. He won. When would that be one for the stats, wouldn't it? A horse that, when was the last time a horse that wins the Arkle goes on and wins the Gold Cup?
He was one of the few, his Arkle winning year, was one of the few to win at Cheltenham, and then he went on and won at Aintree again. I mean, he was a... Anyway, let's have a look at a few stats, if these are going to sway you one way or the other. First one, no winner has been aged over 10 since 1969. Well, Denman and Kauto Star are both 11. Imperial Commander's 10. Yeah. Garrison Savannah, Gary as he was known by Mrs. Pittman, is the only winner in the last 50 years to have been off the track since mid-December. Well, there you are. Diamond Harry has been since November. Only 3 horses aged 6 have run in the Gold Cup in 40 years, but 2 of those... Oh, that's clever. How did we do that? I like that. Ran very good. Millhouse was the last 6-year-old to win in 19...
Could be the start of something big. 63. Millhouse is pretty good.
8 of the last 11 winners ran in the King George. That's a fair enough statistic. The last 11 winners all have won a Grade 1 chase. Well, big surprise. But it's a stat all the same. Second season chasers have won 9 of the last 19 renewals.
Long Run.
There you are. That's a tick against his little box. 1 winner in the last 12 years had not won earlier in the season. but that was Imperial Commander.
Oh.
So you're any wiser for that?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, so you can. It's make your mind up time, Mick.
Yeah.
Okay, make your.
Kauto Star. I'm in the Kauto Star camp. Probably biased, but long run, don't rule him out. They're my two, Kauto Star and long run.
And you don't see Imperial Commander. Where do you see him finishing?
Third.
I'm going to go for the Commander to win it again. Okay, you have been watching on the At the Races mega site, Cheltenham mega site, our preview with Mick Fitzgerald of the 2011 Gold Cup.